Hey everybody. A quick note before starting today's episode. I snagged another 5-star review on iTunes. This one is written by Sluvis and it's titled Incredible and Addicting. Sluvis says, I cannot get enough of this podcast. My favorite episode was episode 15, Tommy. Thinking about his experience as he described everything made it easy for me to imagine, and after I finished it, I felt amazing. This is a great podcast to listen to, and I'd recommend it to anybody willing to listen. Thanks, Sluvis. And as always, if you have any comments or if you'd like to be a subject for a future episode of Psychotropic, drop me a line at psychotropicpodcast.com. Hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks for listening. You had, in your email, talked about combining marijuana and LSD, correct?
Yes. My first experience with marijuana, it was 7th grade, and all the older guys, they did it and everything, and I live in Colorado, so it was just at a young age that I was introduced. In this day of age, it's just hard to not get into it.
Psychotropic presents Blake.
So I was introduced to it, a few friends, and I only took a few hits, and honestly, it was nasty, super harsh, and it didn't do much. Did not do much my first time. I didn't know what the hype was, honestly. I didn't get high, and a lot of people say, "Oh, dude, I got, so high my first time," and then a lot of other people say, I didn't get high my first time, which I'm one of them.
What made you want to try that again? If you didn't experience it the first time, why would you go back for another round?
Because everyone was like, "Oh, dude, you'll definitely be high this time." You know what I mean? You just got to give it a second time. It'll definitely be high this time. Just, peer pressure and honestly curiosity. Just like, I want to get high, you know what I mean? Like, I used to, before, in like 6th, 7th grade, instead of smoking weed, we were too scared to smoke weed, so we would roll up tea and no carbs, you know what I mean, and smoke it in like the tunnels by our house, to actually feel something. I was tired of smoking tea.
I remember, so I was out of high school and everything, and I started learning about having, like, you take banana peels and you scrape off the inside of the skins and dry them and then smoke them, and that was supposed to get you high. I remember trying that because I wanted to, like...
Did it get you high?
No, fuck no. No way.
Dude, I've never heard that one before.
This was crazy. This was early internet.
Yeah, okay.
Can you describe that second time then? The high that you experienced?
The second time, I remember it was a cherry Swisher Sweet, or a cherry zigzag, and dude, I took 2 hits off of it, and it was almost tunnel visioned. You know what I mean? And I remember looking down at my feet, making sure I was stepping in the right place, and I was just so tunnel vision. It was you know, it was late at night, it was dark, I was walking around, it was my friend's apartment complex, walking through the streets and everything, and it was just so, I could definitely tell that it was almost like a cloud, not only emotionally but visually, physically, and you just couldn't. It was weird. It was a weird experience, but it was good.
What was pleasurable about that?
Just getting away, actually getting high and feeling that. Like, before that, I never have taken any mind-altering substances or anything, or any hallucinogens by any means. Weed is a hallucinogen, slight mild form, but it was cool. Before that, I've never really gotten wasted, drunk, or anything like that either. So it was just kind of, you know, a first.
It kind of sounds like maybe it was a novel way of being. It was kind of like a step to the side of your normal consciousness.
Definitely, yeah. And it's just something to do. You get so bored. Yours is just playing basketball with your friends when you're, you know, that age. You get bored and you just want to mess around, and curiosity gets the best of you.
Did you kind of pursue marijuana after that? Was it something that became a normal thing for you?
Definitely, yeah. Not, you know, immediately after, but definitely, yeah. That was 7th, 8th grade. After that, definitely, like, all day, every day. And that's one of the reasons why I don't smoke weed today, is because I have a slightly addictive personality. So it was hard for me to find the medium. It's either all day, every day, or none at all. I couldn't find that, once every 2 days, you know what I mean? Before I go to sleep and right when I wake up, you know, I can't do that. And I know some people who can, but I can't handle it. Weed is too good. So LSD, not too long ago, after that, it came into the mix just kind of the same way that I was telling you about, you know, curiosity, your friends tell you about it, stuff like that. And it just kind of happened. And I always thought, I'd rather do LSD than shrooms, you know what I mean? I don't want to eat, you know, mushrooms and stuff like that. But it just kind of came that way, and it was accessible to us. I think that's where people will take it and get it, is because it's so easily accessible.
So the first time you tried LSD, you got high off of it, though.
Yes, and for me, LSD it triggers a weird part of my brain, a weird part of my personality. I tried it a lot without smoking weed, and I never really thought of it. You know what I mean? Like, I was always so high, tripping wise. I never would smoke on it, and I was always fine. It was always kind of mild to me until I smoked on it. That's when it really got, like, out of control.
What is an LSD trip like for you?
The come up is probably the most, other than the peak, is definitely the most wild part about it. You know, you take it and it's like you're on the edge of your seat waiting, you know what I mean? Like you're scratching your skin, waiting for it to happen. And so when it does, it also depends on the strain. There's so many different strains of it, you know, White Fluff, Grateful Dead, you name it. Every single one is always different. That's what's so scary about this substance, is it's so unknown how potent it is, you know what I mean? And for me, the usual come up that I always had was almost like, you know, you walk past your friend's mom or something, you know what I mean? And it's almost like she has the eyes in the back of her head, like she knows, like she's connected to you somehow. And it's hard to explain, but you're already, she knows, you know what I mean? And she might not even know, but something inside of her knows. Her third eye or her intuition knows something is wrong or something is going on. And I've always sensed that, and I've been super connected, and I'm a super empathetic person like that. So I've always noticed people's moods, people's cues when something shifts, you know, so fast. But I always just notice people, not even around me, not too much visuals around me. I'm always trying to notice, you know, what the people are thinking around me. So that's where I always got caught up in the come up.
Is that a theme that plays out through your entire trip, or does it kind of usually transition into something else? Like, do you usually stop worrying about what other people are thinking?
Yeah, it's not worrying about what other people are thinking. I'm just worried about, I guess it is worried about what other people are thinking a little bit, but it's what they're not thinking. But it's definitely a theme that plays throughout, but it gets more intense and more intense, and other themes start to come in. And the come down is very weird, because the come down, it's not the most intense part about it, but it's the most important. Because it's actually, you notice when you're not high, or you don't come up and you don't see that, and you haven't tripped for a while, you get used to regular life. And so the come down is so important, because it blends that whole different world back into your world, and you actually notice the different things that you didn't notice before that are blended in. And it's not just, you know, appearances, things, you know, inanimate objects. It's the people around you, and really what's going on with your brain connected to this dimension. And it's your surroundings, how they change and change constantly. You're a more rational person when you start coming down. You're thinking more rationally, and you're actually connecting the dots.
What would you say the difference is between the marijuana high and the LSD high?
There's a lot of differences, and there's also a lot of similarities. Honestly, I think marijuana, after my experiences with it on LSD, I definitely see a lot of visuals when I smoke, and I can really pinpoint the visual hallucinations on it. And, you know, similar to LSD, I think marijuana is it is a very, very mild form of it. And then acid, on the other hand, opens up those heavy visuals depending on what strain you take. And it's hard to differentiate the two, because they're so different but so alike, you know what I mean? And it's more of a, you know, acid kind of gets the best of you. It could send your mind into a whole visual experience or a whole mental experience, you know what I mean? And weed is kind of all the same neutral. It's if you smoke sativa, indica, you're trying to go to sleep, you know? So it's definitely different but similar substances.
One of the things that I think about is they're both similar in the sense that they allow you to observe things, especially abstract concepts, from a different vantage point, and almost to where the abstract concepts are a little more clear than they are in sobriety. But while you're viewing those abstract concepts, it's more fleeting. Like, you can't get a firm grasp on them, and they're held out maybe 2, 3, or 4 feet away from you. And then eventually they kind of like wash away, and then something else comes into play. It's almost like you can't keep your attention attended on it. Whereas LSD immerses you in the abstract concepts, where all of a sudden the abstract concepts are the universe, and you are they're not in front of your face. You are a part of it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's a good way to explain it, because especially when I take LSD, I'm constantly looking around at things, you know what I mean? And I almost have this architectural abstract sense. Like, I'm in my basement right now talking to you, and like I can already see what I would notice if I was, tripping. Like, the foundation of the walls, and like how everything's really built and connected with each other. It's a really weird sense that I have with it. Like you said, abstract.
And I feel like, while you're looking at your basement and looking at the foundation and how the walls are built up from it and stuff, you would be applying that concept to other facets of your life.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
And it just expands and extends out, and pretty soon you're just having these whoa moments because you had never thought about your life as being a part of a architectural thing.
Yeah, and almost realizations. You're like, wow, why haven't I thought of this before?
So, what is it like to combine marijuana and LSD?
It's almost like you're steady on your trip, and the real peak isn't until you actually smoke on it, in my opinion. And I've taken a big dab on it and stuff. It enhances it so much, whether it's visuals, just you name it. It enhances it times 10 for me, and it just gets so dramatic almost, but really real life. It's unexplainable almost. It's almost like just taking a few more tabs. You know what I mean? Like,
it amplifies the LSD trip.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it does. It amplifies it a lot, and it sends it into a weird course, depending on what strain you have. And I've had good times, great times, where it just sent me into, and my trip was awesome. But I've also had a lot of bad trips on it, and that's where I really get. The bad trips are the one that stand out the most for me. You know what I mean? You start noticing people's emotions, people, looking, and you notice that when you do amplify that more, these people have more surveillance on you almost. You know what I mean? And it goes into almost a, for me sometimes, depending on how much I smoked or what type of acid I have, almost schizophrenic. It's very weird what it does, and I'll be fine before that, and then it almost sends me into a schizophrenic trip. It's very odd.
What do you mean by a schizophrenic trip? As in, your inner voices start to become external? Or...
Yeah, like ego death. Like you said, the inner voices get not external. I've never had like bad voices like that, but it almost gets to the point where, for example, there's a burglar, and he's about to commit a burglary, and he's going into the store and buying the stuff he needs. You know what I mean? The mask, the gun, or whatever. There's people always, and this is a pretty big thing about psychology. There's a concept on it. I'm not sure the name, but there's people that you might just be in the store doing something, and you see this guy, and even though you don't know him or anything, something in you is watching him. The surveillance of the human eye is never talked about, but it is so powerful. Probably the most powerful thing ever in existence is the human eye and the perception and the big puzzle it has in with everybody's consciousness. Just a little, each one of us is just a little puzzle piece. So you notice that. I noticed that a lot when I smoked on it. And I've noticed, people watching, observing, almost studying. It's very weird.
there was this time when I was on mushrooms. It was me and a group of people, and one of the people had a pit bull, and the pit bull was hanging out with us, right? And I had taken a fairly large dose of mushrooms. This was in my early 20s. Maybe I was like 19, maybe.
Yep.
And I'm sitting there and I'm coming up and I'm getting high, and I start to watch the pit bull. And to me, the pit bull is starting to act weird. Like, it's starting to act sketchy. And I'm starting to think that one of us dropped a mushroom on the ground, and that fucking pit bull had picked it up and eaten it and was now on mushrooms and starting to freak out. And so me, in my weird state, I started kind of like, started trying to comfort the pit bull by going to it and kind of like holding it or petting it or whatever. And the thing kept moving away from me and acting agitated and kind of weird. And it got to a point, like, I kept doing this and kept doing this. And it got to a point where the pit bull, I believe it growled at me. And for whatever reason, it kicked me out of my trip long enough to where I looked around the room and noticed that everybody else was acting totally normal. Like, they weren't focused on the pit bull. I was the only one focused on the pit bull. And it kind of dawned on me that maybe the reason the pit bull was acting weird was because there was some human that was acting slightly weird, constantly staring at it and chasing it around the room. And it just, it was kind of already wigged out. But it wasn't on any mushrooms or anything. It was actually just responding to me, responding to it, when really I was the one that was kind of instigating the situation. So I wonder, I can imagine, I know I've done this too, like, you kind of start to get high and you become a little more shifty-eyed and you start to observe people because you're trying to find any sort of recognition of your highness in their eyes. And before you know it, like, they're starting to look at you like, what the fuck is this person looking at me for?
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. And it's not just when you're high either. It's like when you're, if you're sober too, it happens all the time, people, and it could just go to the point where people just, you're loved. We're watched, you know what I mean? And we're, people keep us safe, and they don't even know that they are, but they're watching, and you're seen, and that's why it's just crazy these days where, like, a serial killer or something, even though they can't say they couldn't find him or something, that we know in this world, it's more connected than we all think. The information it's hard to explain, but we all are connected to each other, somebody has seen him going, you know what I mean? Somebody knows deep down in their consciousness. It's just, where is that relayed? Where is that stored? Where is it retrieved?
So you had talked about being at your friend's house and thinking that their parent, their eyes in the back of their head, you could just feel those more when you were high, right?
I wasn't actually thinking of an actual experience, but I'm saying for example.
So do you think that those eyes in the back of the head are more just a response to your shiftiness, or do you it kind of sounds like you think that it has amplified some sort of awareness between the two of you to where they know that you're altered?
Yeah, awareness between the both of us. It's a connection. It's an empathetic connection where you have with them. And I've observed it from third person with this a lot on LSD, and this is probably the best way I can explain it. Is you're sitting back, and there's there's 7 people in the room per se, and there's there's 2 guys, and say their names are Albert and Alfred. And Albert and Alfred want to go over to Mark's house, right? And they're like, oh, yeah, Mark, are we going to come over there later tonight, And Mark's like, yeah, let me see. I'll see. And you can just look at him automatically and know, right when he looks away or ends a sentence, and just know that they're not going to come, or he doesn't want them to come over. You know what I mean? It's just super empathetic, and you can just tell that the expression on their face, and you just start to get to know the person by just observing them.
And it kind of sounds like you're attributing that to some sort of shared awareness. Do you think that shared awareness is just observing their speech patterns and like their body movement? Or do you think it's more an extension of their consciousness affecting you and informing you of their true intentions?
Both. Definitely an extension of their consciousness, no doubt about that. And definitely their mood, their energy in intervals. After Albert and Alfred said, hey, can we come back? That triggered something in Mark's mood, Mark's energy, you know what I mean? And you can just sense it. Like it's like these vibrations just come at you like a million miles an hour, and you can just like there's such a strong connection that I can't feel as heavily when I'm not high, but I've definitely brought that with me through my sobriety.
How do you think that being high amplifies that?
Like you said, it just amplifies it a lot more. And I think you notice it more. You choose to notice it more. You know what I mean? When you're sober, you're kind of going along, going with the flow. But you really sit back and observe things when you're high like that. And you start to notice, you start to pick up those vibrations like I was talking about.
And so you said that you've actually carried this back from those high experiences back into normal life, correct?
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, all the time. I can just sense people's auras more. Like I said, their mood, everything. You know what I mean? I can tell when something's up or when something's wrong. It's a good skill to have.
So you're happy with that? Like you're happy having brought that skill back?
It's a love-hate relationship. Like I'm young. I'm 20 years old. And like when I got out of high school, like I went on a few dates and everything, you know what I mean? Like where I can tell when, like, for example, like a girl doesn't, like, not super into me or something, you know what I mean? And like I can just tell that. When other guys, I feel like they're clueless and just keep trying and trying and trying. But then it's the other way around where you can tell if somebody's super into you. And it goes as deep as family, when something's wrong, you can know.
That's probably extremely beneficial for the girl.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Do you have a story that is related to this experiencing another person's awareness or that heightened awareness?
It was the last time I tripped, and it was about 8:00 in the morning, and I had a really rough trip. It went kind of south for me. I had a lot of just bad thoughts. It was a bad setup for me in the first place. Anyways, I had left my friend's house, and I wasn't, no hallucinations, no anything, and it was. These two kids were there. They were my friend's cousins, and I don't know why they were there, but they were weird, and they were giving me really bad vibes the whole night. And they were still there in the morning, and they were up all night with me. And I don't know why, but they were just there to mess. Long story short, they were there to mess me up. I remember one of them said, I was talking to him, and I was just talking to him, saying the weirdest stuff to him. And this guy looked at his friend, and he said, man, I knew this kid was something else when on Halloween when he fell out of my truck. And I was like, what? And I said, Evan. And he didn't notion anything or acknowledge it. But I looked at his face, and his face was similar to my friend's Evan's face. And they were similar, really similar, same structure and everything. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is Evan. And on Halloween, the last Halloween before that, I was in my friend's Evan's truck, and I had taken a bunch of Xanax and drank a bunch of beers, and I was like completely like falling out of his truck and everything, and it was just a crazy night. And that was like one of the first times I met this guy Evan, my pretty good friend at the time. And I could see him, and he was like almost like watching over me, like telling his other friend, like, oh, I knew this dude was something when he fell out of my truck on Halloween. And it wasn't him at all. I was like, what the hell, you know? So I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta leave. So I left, and I don't even know where I'm driving to. And I'm trying to get home, but I'm taking a weird way. And I'm at the stoplight, and it's almost like all these cars are like speeding up, slowing down, trying to get me to go somewhere. Like something bad is going to happen. And I'm still experiencing this bad trip, and it's just really overwhelming. And it's almost like, you know, I see a bunch of light colored cars in the left lane, like, come on, follow me, you know what I mean? And then I see a bunch of brown beat up cars in the right lane where I'm going, you know what I mean? Almost like I'm going down a bad path. And it heightened me so much. In the right side of the lane, there was my best friend, and it was in his car, and he had his window rolled down. And he was making a turn, and he stopped to make the right turn, and he kind of just looks over at me, and it's him, but it's him. He's about 20 years old at the time, and it's him when he's about 45 years old. It's like his older version of himself, or it looks like his dad almost. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, what the fuck, you know? And so I had lived, this was back in high school, and I have lived in an apartment complex with my mom. And I was going back to the house, and I hopped on the highway. Everything looked so weird, and like everybody was almost heading a different direction. Like there was no cars on my side, and like a bunch of cars just going like 1,000 miles an hour on the other side. Like I shouldn't go home. And I had a really bad, I actually don't talk to my mom anymore. She's a really bad influence and everything on me, and I haven't talked to her in a while. And I went back to the house, and I was at a stoplight, and I was super beat up, and I was just I wasn't trying to disturb anyone or anything, and I had my windows down and my music down, and this guy next to me, he was driving a Corvette, brand new Corvette, and he, you know, turned on his music, and he turned it down, and he said, hey, it's all right, man, you can turn it up, you know what I mean? And I looked over at him, I'm like, what the hell is going on, you know what I mean? Like, who says that? And so I turned it up, and me and him, he sends it like 100 miles an hour down the road, and I just follow him. I'm like, fuck it. And he pulls in, and he's actually one of my next door neighbors. He pulls in right next to me, and he almost like at the stoplight, he almost like winks at me, and that heightened awareness, like you knew he knew. So I knew that he knew, and I knew that he was like out there to try to protect me or something. I have no idea. I know it sounds crazy, but this happened. And so I get there, and there was my mom's friend was there, and he was an older guy, but younger than my grandpa. And he looked just like my grandpa. And my grandpa, my dad had passed away when I was 7. So my grandpa has always been there for me, almost like a father figure. And he looked just like him, same facial features, everything. I remember he was leaving at the time, and he looked at me and he said, hey, take care. You know what I mean? Like, I never met him, but he said, hey, you know, take care. And he said it really weird to me. And I knew it was my grandpa looking down on me. So after that, I know that people in your life, you know, loved ones, dead ones, I see my father all the time in other people's faces, looking towards me, looking down on me, making sure, you know, I'm all right. And, you know, giving me little hints and signs that they're there. You know what I mean?
This episode was produced by me, Philip Johnson. All songs used can be found in the description section of this episode. If you liked what you heard today, please subscribe. Also, rate and leave a review on iTunes. It goes a really, really long way. If you'd like to become a patron of Psychotropic, or if you'd like to check out some Psychotropic related swag, or if you have a story to share, you can do all of this at psychotropicpodcast.com. If you're interested in getting a better idea about upcoming episodes, be sure to follow Psychotropic on Instagram at Psychotropic Podcast, all one word. Thanks again for listening, everybody. See you next time.